everyone, welcome to Yogic Delicacies. I'm Aryaman, your host, and I'm joined by my co-host and self-proclaimed food philosopher Rishi.
Glad to be here, Aryaman. Though, I think food enthusiast sounds cooler.
Fair enough, Rishi. Today, we are having a fascinating episode for you. Did you know yoga isn't just about stretching and breathing? It also has a unique philosophy about food.
I didn't know that. But now I'm curious. What does yoga say about food? Are we talking ancient wisdom, or is it just another way to make me feel guilty about my snacking habits?
Hold on, Rishi. We have an expert yoga teacher with us who will be answering all our questions. So let's begin. Today, we have Miss Kavita Mathur with us to answer all our queries. She's one of the TRIHEALERS, is a history graduate with a master's in media who spent years behind the camera in the glamorous media world until her life led her to discover the transformative power of yoga.
After completing her yoga teacher training at the Yoga Institute in Mumbai, she embraced the philosophy of eat, breathe, love yoga, and now dedicates herself to spreading its simple, life changing techniques to help others live with ease, self discipline, and faith.
Miss Kavita, let's start with the basics. Most people think yoga is about physical poses and meditation, but does yoga also have its own food culture?
And how is it different from the modern eat this, not that kind of advice? I mean, does yoga really care about carbs and calories, or is it just looking at food from a whole new angle?
Diet or food or ahar is one of the four main pillars of yoga. So we have very much our own culture of food, but unlike modern science, our approach is not based on the nutritive value of the food. In fact, what we can eat and what we must avoid is based on the psychosomatic effect that the food exercises on us.
We have heard that yoga looks at food not just as something to nourish the body, but also the mind. Can you explain what yoga means by the psychosomatic effects of food?
There is a proverb that says, as the food, so is the mind. As the mind, so is the man. Yoga says that besides the body, food also affects our mind and how our sense organs function. So, what we eat affects our thoughts, emotions, actions, habits, and finally, our character. It may be hard to believe this, that our food habits determine our whole personality. But as we say, yoga is a science of experience, and we need to experience this to believe how we are affected by the food that we are consuming.
So, are you saying my food choices don't just affect my waistline, but also my thoughts and emotions?
And if that's true, does it mean the saying you are what you eat is more literal than we realized?
Oh no, Aryaman, if that's true, I might have turned into a slice of cheesecake by now.
Haha, very funny, Rishi. Now, let's tackle the question everyone wants to ask but doesn't dare to. Does yoga even acknowledge the existence of junk food, or is that just a modern problem? And there's the big one. Can we ever eat junk food and still call ourselves yogis, or is that completely off the table?
So, the idea of food is completely different in yoga. According to modern science, everything is made of atoms. Similarly, in yoga, everything in nature, animate or inanimate, is made up of Prakriti. In terms of physics, you can understand Prakriti as a principle of matter. All atoms are made up of protons, electrons, and neutrons. Very similarly, Prakriti is made up of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas.
Now, yoga talks about three qualities that apply to everything in the universe: sattva, rajas, and tamas. Miss Kavita, can you explain these concepts in a way that's easy for us to grasp?
It is Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. All the objects of this world, living or non living, are made up of different permutations and combinations of these three attributes. the sattva, rajas, and tamas. So in yoga, there are foods that give us sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic qualities, and these qualities determine our personality.
And do these qualities apply only to food, or can we also use them to describe people's personalities? Because I'm pretty sure I know some tamasic individuals.
What kind of foods fall into each category? For example, what makes something sattvic and why is it considered so beneficial?
So when one eats food which is sattvic in nature, one gets energy, the body becomes lighter, one feels joy and happiness. One can focus well, learn better, and adapt to various situations of life. One feels and exhibits a lot of energy and at the same time can keep the mind calm and composed. People who eat sattvic food can think clearly and make good decisions. They become less reactive and respond rationally to stimuli, good or bad.
Miss Kavita, what about Rajasic foods?
Wow, there is a long list. But we can understand it this way: all foods which are natural in their unrefined forms are sattvic. So, grains like rice, wheat, fruits, and vegetables, which are seasonal and locally grown, milk, honey, jaggery, and all unrefined vegetable oils, some spices like cumin, coriander. Among the pulses, we have the yellow moong dal, the green moong. These are all sattvic in nature.
So, Rajasic foods sound like the overachievers of the food world. Are there any downsides to eating too much of them?
So, Rajasic foods are high in protein. So, we need to consume them. They need to be eaten. But yoga suggests that they should be eaten in smaller quantities and less frequently.
But proteins are needed for so many day to day functions. Then why should we have a limited intake?
You're right. These foods do give us energy, do give the body energy, but they also tend to make our mind fickle. The ability to focus reduces. One becomes greedy and irritable. One tends to dominate and wants to control others. One can get distracted easily. So, when one eats Rajasic food, one has energy, but this energy comes with a certain restlessness, which is not conducive for practicing yoga.
But when needed, proteins can also be a good source of energy for the body. What about this fact?
As I mentioned earlier, yoga does not look at food from a nutritive point of view. The foods that we listed as Rajasic are all foods that are slightly harder for the body to digest, and they have a tendency of producing a lot of phlegm in the body.
So, where do my beloved french fries fall? Please be honest, I can take it.
So essentially, all refined foods, that is, foods made up of maida, which is refined wheat flour, are tamasic in nature. So all breads and bread items like pizzas, sandwiches, burgers, and other baked items will fall under this category. So you were talking about junk food earlier. All junk foods come under tamasic category. Essentially, all the foods that we may love to eat come under the tamasic category.
And tamasic foods seem to get a bad rep. But why exactly are they considered harmful? What happens to us if we eat too many tamasic foods?
So, French fries, as much as we would love them, are all tamasic in nature. All foods that are very high in fat, sugar, or both are all tamasic. Very spicy food, foods with too many seasonings, stale food, and stimulants like tea, coffee, and chocolates are all tamasic in nature.
And the big question, can we still enjoy tamasic foods occasionally, or is it a hard no in yoga?
So, ideally, tamasic foods are those which should not be eaten at all. But since most of our favorite foods come under this category, we can take a little liberty. So we should eat them once in a while and in small quantities. And there's another little hack to this. Lunchtime is a better time to eat these foods because then the body is able to digest them well and they affect us the least. So we already know the ill effects such food have on our body. These foods tend to make us lethargic and dull. One becomes lazy and always has excuses for not doing work. We get into inertia. We have a negative mindset. We lose all motivation and we don't tend to set goals in life. We feel little or no energy in the body and mind and feel completely distracted and unfocused.
Let's talk portion sizes. Does yoga give any guidelines on how much food we should eat?
So, yoga does not talk about calories or dietary allowances. However, yoga does tell us about how much food we should eat, when to eat or not eat. So, yoga tells us about our timings for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and also yoga tells us what state of mind should be eaten. So, how to eat. Besides, of course, the type of food that we should eat, which we've spoken about at length. There are no measures as such, but yoga offers a guideline which is more universal and can be followed by everyone as a routine, a diet plan. So, one must eat according to one's age and physical activity, never overeat. One should fill half the stomach with food, one fourth with liquid, and the rest one fourth should be left empty. Small meals are recommended. One must eat just as much food, which can be digested in 4 hours and makes one feel hungry in about 4 hours. And one should eat only when hungry.
And what's this about eating every 4 hours? Is this based on hunger, digestion, or just a clever way to keep us disciplined?
Absolutely. That brings us to the guidelines on when we should eat food according to yoga. So, generally, our digestive system takes about 4 hours to digest food, and the stomach is ready to receive food after that. The meal should thus be enough to be digested and make us hungry in the next 4 hours. And in case we are not hungry in the next 4 hours, we need to stop and question the quantity and the quality of the food that we are consuming.
Does yoga recommend following the body's natural clock for meals, like eating lunch at noon and dinner early in the evening?
Yes, and that is called the circadian rhythm. So, breakfast should be eaten within an hour to hour and a half after we have woken up. Lunch should be eaten between 12 and 2 because our digestion is at its peak at that time. Dinner should be over before 7:30 p.m. in the evening, and it should be timed in such a way that it is eaten at least 2 to 3 hours before we have slept so that the food is digested before one sleeps. Otherwise, the body does not get rest at night. To prepare the body for the day's activities, the breakfast should be rich in nutrients and calories. The lunch is the big meal of the day between 12 and 2 because that is the time that the digestion is at its peak. And dinner should be small, light, and easy to digest. One must include some liquid preparation along with each meal. For example, you could take milk along with breakfast. Buttermilk is excellent post lunch, and soup for dinner. And as we discussed, all our meals should be essentially sattvic in nature.
And what about liquids? Can I sip on coffee during meals, or am I breaking some sacred yogic rule?
That's a great question. So, yoga sets guidelines on when one should drink water and when one should avoid. Water undoubtedly is an important part of our diet, and we should drink at least 8 to 10 glasses of water in a day. It is important to stay well hydrated as water performs important functions in the body, and 70% of our body is water. When we wake up in the morning, we should drink 1 glass full of warm water. We should avoid drinking water half an hour before a meal and an hour after a meal, as it dilutes the digestive enzymes. But some liquid is needed for digestion. So one could include, as mentioned earlier, milk for breakfast, buttermilk for lunch, soups for dinner, and we should drink water whenever thirsty.
Now, Miss Kavita, we've talked about what to eat and when to eat. But how we eat is just as important. What does yoga say about eating mindfully?
So we should take small morsels and chew the food well. Our state of mind should be pleasant while we are eating our meals. And if it's not, then we should wait, do something to get into a pleasant mood, and then eat. We should eat to live and not the other way. And while eating, we should not watch TV, talk, be on our phone, or do any other work while eating.
Does this mean no more eating in front of the TV or scrolling YouTube during dinner? That might be harder than any yoga pose I've tried.
And how can we make better food choices without feeling overwhelmed by all the options out there? Does yoga offer any strategies for this?
Interestingly, yoga practically has answers to all questions. There's a beautiful sutra, sutra number 2.16 in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali that says, Heyam dukkham anagatam. Future pain and suffering can be avoided by following the path of yoga. We've discussed in details about what yoga lays down with respect to our food, when to eat, how much to eat, what state of mind to eat in, and what to eat. But there's another very important aspect to remember that yoga also says that each one of us is very unique in our body. So the trick here is to live our life by maintaining a sense of awareness. And yoga is also a science of experience. So just listening to the language of our body, experiencing how we feel, having eaten a certain meal, whether we're feeling hungry, are we feeling energetic the next morning when we are waking up, are we feeling heavy, are we feeling relaxed or irritable. We should just watch out for all of this within ourselves, and we will realize for ourselves what works and what doesn't work for us. Another very important aspect to eating our meals is we must pray before our food, expressing gratitude to the whole chain of people involved in getting the food to our plate.
Folks, that's all for today's episode. A big thank you to our yoga expert for sharing such profound insights into food and its connection to yoga.
Yes, thank you, Miss Kavita. I never thought food could be so philosophical and maybe a little intimidating at the same time.
Remember, food is more than just what you eat, it's how you nourish your body, mind, and soul.
And don't worry, folks, you can start slow. Even small changes can make a big difference.
See you next time on Yogic Delicacies. Stay mindful, stay healthy, and most importantly, stay curious.